So the first thing that we do when we get to the front of the truck is we look for any colored fluids or puddles underneath that might indicate a leak. My lights are clean, not broken or missing. They are my clearance lights, my running lights, my blinkers, hazards, and reflectors. They are amber in color. My headlights are clear and white. When we step to the passenger side of the truck, we're going to go over our general wires and hoses. They are not cut, cracked, frayed, or leaking. My coolant reservoir, we're going to check that our coolant is above the add line. Follow this hose down and it leads us to our water pump. The water pump is securely mounted. It is not damaged or leaking. This one is belt driven. The belt has no more than 3/4 of an inch of play, and it has no cuts, cracks, or frays. My alternator is securely mounted. It is not damaged. The wires on the back are securely fastened and they are not cut, cracked, or frayed. My alternator is belt driven. The belt is not cut, cracked, or frayed and has no more than 3/4 of an inch of play. And that's it on this side. Now we go to the driver's side. First thing we want to do here is make sure that our oil is above the add line. We check that our power steering fluid is above the add line. We follow this hose back and it leads to our power steering pump. The power steering pump is securely mounted. It is not damaged or leaking. This is gear driven and operational. Above that, we have our air compressor. It is securely mounted. It is not damaged or leaking. It is also gear driven and operational. Now, we have our power steering box. The hoses going to and from the power steering box are not cut, cracked, frayed, or leaking. The power steering box is securely mounted. It is not damaged or leaking, and the nuts and bolts are not loose or missing. Now we have our steering linkage. Our steering linkage is our pitman arm, drag link, knuckle, and tie rod. They are not cracked or worn. My joints and sockets are not loose or worn. And I have no loose or missing nuts, bolts, or cotter pins. That concludes the steering linkage section, so now we're going to do our suspension system. My spring hanger is securely mounted. It is not cracked or broken, and I have no loose or missing nuts or bolts. My bushing is not damaged or missing. My leaf spring is not shifted, cracked, or missing, and my U-bolts are not bent, broken, loose, or missing any nuts or bolts. My shock is securely mounted and not leaking. So now we can do our brake system. My brake hose fittings are secure. They are not damaged or leaking. The brake hose is not cut, cracked, frayed, or leaking. That leads us to our brake chamber. The brake chamber is securely mounted. It is not dented, cracked, or leaking, and the clamp is tight and not missing. My push rod and slack adjuster are securely mounted. They are not bent, broken, loose, or missing any parts, and there is no more than 1 inch of play on the push rod when pulled by hand. Our brake drum and lining have no dents, cracks, or holes, and the lining is not worn too thin. They are both free of oil and grease. Now we can come out to our tire. The tire is evenly worn. It has no less than 4 32 of an inch tread depth, and I have no cuts or other damage on the sidewalls. Since we just talked about our tire, we're gonna check our valve stem and cap. My valve stem and cap are secure. They are not damaged or missing. I'm going to check my tire pressure with my tire pressure gauge to make sure that it is up to manufacturer's specifications. My rim is not bent, cracked, or illegally welded. My lug nuts are not loose or missing. There are no rust trails. There are no shiny threads, and there are no cracks or other damage around the bolt holes. My hub seal is securely mounted. It is not damaged or leaking. If it was equipped with a sight glass, I would check for adequate fluid. And that is it for the front axle and engine compartment of the truck.